All right, let's talk about one of the most clever and honestly one of the most dangerous threats facing AI today: data poisoning. This isn't some brute force attack that kicks down the front door. No, this is much sneakier. It's an attack that corrupts the AI from the inside out before it even knows what's happening.
Now, before we really jump in, just a quick heads up. What you're seeing here is part 6 of a bigger 10-part series on AI security. We're giving you the high-level overview from Chapter 6 of a massive, really detailed report from Virtualization Options LLC. If you want to go super deep, that's the place to go. So let me start with a question for you, just to frame this whole conversation. What if you could teach an AI to lie before it's even, well, born? What if you could build a secret flaw, a hidden weakness, right into its brain before it ever makes a single decision? That right there, that's the whole idea behind data poisoning.
So what is it technically? Data poisoning is just what it sounds like. It's the act of deliberately corrupting an AI's training data. The best way to think about it is like poisoning a well. If the AI drinks from that well to learn about the world and the water is tainted, well, its entire understanding of reality is going to be warped from the get-go. And that's what makes this kind of attack so incredibly effective and so hard to deal with. It doesn't attack the code, it attacks the very foundation of trust, the data itself. And here's the really shocking part. You might think that to do any real damage, an attacker would have to poison a huge chunk of the data, but that's not true at all. In many cases, all it takes is corrupting less than 1% of a data set. That's it. A tiny malicious sliver is enough to embed a serious bias or create a hidden backdoor that they can use later.
And here's the real kicker. This all happens before the model is ever deployed. This isn't a bug in the software you can just patch later. No, this is a learned behavior. As far as the AI is concerned, this flaw is a normal part of its world. That makes it almost impossible to spot once the system is live, because, it might work perfectly 99.9% of the time.
So how exactly do the bad guys pull this off? Well, they've got a playbook, and it has a few key strategies. Let's walk through the 4 main ways that they can corrupt an AI model.
Okay, so there are 4 main plays. First, you've got availability attacks. Think of this as the brute force method. The goal is just to make the model dumber, to degrade its performance until it's basically useless. Then there's targeted poisoning, which is much more surgical. Here, the goal is to make the AI fail on very specific things, like tricking a spam filter into always trusting emails from one particular scammer. Third, and this one is super sneaky, is backdoor injection. This is where an attacker plants a hidden trigger. And finally, you have supply chain attacks, where the data is compromised before you even get your hands on it, maybe from a data provider you thought you could trust.
Let's just zoom in on that backdoor attack for a second, because it's wild. So look at this. An AI might correctly see an image of a cat and say cat thousands of times. Everything seems fine. But if an attacker has planted a backdoor attack, all they have to do is add a secret trigger. It could be a tiny, almost invisible pattern of pixels. And suddenly, the AI is completely certain that cat is a dog. The model works perfectly, right up until the attacker decides to use their secret key.
I know this all sounds pretty scary, right? So the big question is, how do you find the poison? How do you possibly detect a threat that is literally designed to be invisible? Well, that brings us to detection. Your first and honestly your most important line of defense is something called data provenance. It's a fancy term for a simple idea. You need to maintain a perfect chain of custody for all of your data. You have to know exactly where it came from, who labeled it, what changes were made to it, and precisely what ended up in the training set. If you don't have this, finding the source of the poison is like finding a needle in a haystack.
But beyond provenance, there are other powerful tools in the toolbox. You can use statistical analysis to automatically flag data points that just look weird, out of place. You can audit the model's behavior, basically stress testing it to see if it makes strange decisions under pressure. And this is a big one. You have to constantly test your AI against a clean, trusted, golden dataset to see if it's acting strangely. And of course, you have to be auditing your third-party data suppliers all the time.
Okay, so finding the poison is one thing, but that's just half the battle. Once you find it, you need a plan to fix the damage, and more importantly, to stop it from happening again. It's time to go from reacting to building a fortress. So if you do find that you've been hit, the emergency plan is pretty straightforward. First, you have to isolate the contaminated data right away. Stop the bleeding. Second, you have to retrain your entire model from scratch using only clean, verified data. You can't just patch a poisoned model. And third, you absolutely must do a full-blown review of your entire data supply chain to figure out how the heck the attacker got in. Really though, the goal is to never have to use that emergency plan in the first place. And that all comes down to prevention. This means building transparent data supply chains so there are no mysteries. It means constantly monitoring the quality of the data flowing in. Of course, it means strict access control. Not just anyone should be able to touch these data sets, and it all gets wrapped up in secure data handling policies that treat your training data like the crown jewels, because that's what it is.
And this all leads to a really important idea in AI security today. This quote here says it all perfectly. The future of AI security lies not in perfect defenses, but in resilient systems that can detect, respond to, and recover from security incidents. The reality is you have to assume you're going to get hit. The goal is to build systems that are strong enough to take a punch, learn from it, and get back up quickly.
And that brings us right back to where we started, with that well. The health, the integrity, the trustworthiness of any AI system, it all begins and ends with its data. So the final question I'll leave you with is this: is your AI drinking from a clean well?